I was out with my other lover's partner when my phone buzzed. It was a photo from my husband. The picture showed our bedroom, my side of the bed torn apart. The caption? Don't bother coming back. I ran home anyway, and found something that made me collapse. My name is Laura, and I've been married to Mark for 15 years. We live in Naperville, a suburb west of Chicago. Our marriage had its challenges, but I believed we were solid. That belief shattered one evening. It began innocently. I met Daniel at a local book club. He was charming and passionate about literature. Our shared love for classic novels led to conversations beyond the club. Texts turned into coffee dates, and before I realized it, we were having an affair. One evening, Daniel and I had dinner at a small restaurant in downtown Chicago. The atmosphere was intimate, with dim lighting and soft jazz. As we talked and laughed, I felt a thrill I hadn't in years. It was like being young and carefree again. During dinner, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was a message from Mark. With shaking hands, I opened it to see a photo of our bedroom. My side of the bed was torn apart, sheets and pillows everywhere. The caption read, "Don't bother coming back." Panic hit me. Blood drained from my face as I stared at the screen, unable to process it. Daniel noticed and asked what was wrong. I couldn't explain. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and ran out of the restaurant, leaving Daniel confused. The drive home was a blur. My mind raced. How did Mark find out? What awaited me at home? The familiar streets of Chicago now seemed unfamiliar and threatening. When I pulled into our driveway, the house was dark. An eerie silence surrounded it. I hesitated before stepping out of the car, my legs heavy. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was cold and dark, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. I called out Mark's name, but no answer. My footsteps echoed as I walked to our bedroom. Pushing the door open, I saw the scene from the photo. My side of the bed was in disarray, sheets ripped, personal items scattered. But what lay on the bed made me collapse to my knees. Amidst the chaos was our wedding album. The pages were torn out and shredded, remnants strewn across the mattress. Beside it was a note in Mark's handwriting, "I trusted you." Tears streamed down my face as the weight of my actions hit me. Our life together, now reduced to torn photographs and broken trust, was too much to bear. I don't know how long I sat there, sobbing into the remnants of our past. Eventually, I gathered the strength to stand and search the house for any sign of Mark. He was gone. His closet was empty, his belongings missing. It was as if he had vanished from my life entirely. The days that followed were a haze of regret and self-loathing. I tried reaching out to Mark, but my calls went straight to voicemail. Friends and family were tight-lipped, either unaware of his whereabouts or unwilling to share. One evening, as I sat alone in our living room, nursing a glass of wine, there was a knock at the door. My heart leaped with hope. Maybe it was Mark, ready to talk. I rushed to the door and opened it, only to find a courier holding an envelope. "Mrs. Thompson?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, barely above a whisper. He handed me the envelope and left without another word. I closed the door and stared at the package in my hands. My name was scrawled across the front in Mark's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find divorce papers. A lump formed in my throat as I read through the documents. Attached was a letter from Mark. "Laura, I loved you with all my heart. Discovering your betrayal has shattered me in ways I can't describe. I can't continue in this marriage knowing the trust we built has been destroyed. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Mark." The finality of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had lost the man who had stood by me through thick and thin, all for a fleeting affair that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of our home and into a small apartment downtown. The walls were bare, and the rooms echoed with emptiness, much like my heart. Nights were the hardest. I would often wake up reaching for Mark, only to be met with cold sheets and the harsh reality of my solitude. I sought therapy to come to terms with my actions and the pain I had caused. Through countless sessions, I began to understand the underlying issues that led me to stray. It wasn't about Daniel or the thrill of the affair. It was about my own insecurities and fears, things I should have addressed with Mark instead of seeking solace elsewhere. One day, while walking through Grant Park, I spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench overlooking Lake Michigan. It was Mark. He looked thinner, his face gaunt and eyes hollow. My heart ached at the sight of him. Summoning every ounce of courage, I approached him. He noticed me and gave a small nod, but his eyes held a guarded expression. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to tell you that." He sighed, looking out at the water. "Laura, I loved you. But some things can't be undone." "I understand," I replied, tears welling up. "I just hope you find happiness." He stood up, giving me one last look. "Take care of yourself." And with that, he walked away, leaving me standing alone amidst the bustling city. Years have passed since that encounter. I've rebuilt my life, focusing on self-growth and understanding. The pain of my betrayal and the loss of Mark remain with me, serving as a constant reminder of the consequences of my actions. To anyone reading this, cherish the trust and love you have in your relationships. Once broken, some things can never be mended. A few weeks after seeing Mark at Grant Park, I tried to move on. I forced myself into a routine. Wake up, coffee, work, therapy, sleep, repeat. It was mechanical, but it was something. Then one Friday afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. It read, "You don't know the whole story. You really think you were the only one lying." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure what to do. I showed it to my therapist during our next session. She told me not to jump to conclusions, but the seed had already been planted. My mind ran wild. Had Mark been hiding something too? I tried to ignore it, but the message kept replaying in my head. A week later, I got another one. This time it was a photo. Mark, with a woman. They were sitting on a couch. She was leaning on him. His hand was on her knee. The text said, "She was always there. You were just too busy cheating to notice." I wanted to scream. Who was she? When did this start? Was this before or after he found out about Daniel? I tried calling the number. No answer. I texted back, "Who is this? What do you want?" No response. I didn't recognize the woman in the photo, but something about the room looked familiar. I zoomed in. The couch, the lamp in the corner, the painting on the wall. That was my friend Tara's apartment. I hadn't seen her in months. Tara and I had drifted after the divorce. We used to be close. Weekly dinners, double dates, girls' nights. Then silence. I hadn't even thought to ask where she'd gone. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was being paranoid. But the next day, I drove to her place. She opened the door, clearly surprised. "Laura? Wow, it's been a while." I didn't waste time. "Was Mark here?" Her smile vanished. "What?" I pushed past her into the living room. It was the same room from the photo. I turned to her. "Don't lie. I know he was here. I saw the picture." Her face twisted. "He came to talk. That's all." "Really?" I held up the phone, showing her the photo. "This doesn't look like talking." She crossed her arms. "You don't get to be mad. You were screwing someone else for months." I was stunned. "You knew." "Everyone knew, Laura," she snapped. "You think Mark didn't talk to anyone? He was broken. I was there for him when you weren't." My mouth went dry. "Did you sleep with him?" She didn't answer. That was all I needed. I left without another word. The betrayal felt like a second knife in my back. I had destroyed my marriage, and now my best friend had helped bury it. I sat in my car outside her place, shaking. When I finally got home, I poured a drink and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed again. Same number. Still think he's the victim? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called Daniel. I told him I needed to talk. We met at a coffee shop in Wicker Park. I hadn't seen him since I ran out on him that night. He looked nervous, like he was expecting a slap. I told him everything. The text, the photo, Tara. He leaned in and whispered, "I didn't want to tell you this, but someone's messing with you." "What do you mean?" He lowered his voice. "Mark came to see me." My heart stopped. "When?" 2 weeks ago. Said he wanted to meet. Said he wanted to know why. Then he asked me weird questions. If I knew who else you talked to. If you were lying to me too. He was off. Like really off. I didn't understand. Why would he care now? Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. But he said something else. He said this wasn't over." That night, I went home and locked every door. Something didn't add up. Mark had been hurt, yes. But something about his sudden coldness, the messages, the visit to Daniel, it felt like he was orchestrating something. Or maybe someone else was. I couldn't trust anyone. Then, 2 nights later, I came home to find my door slightly open. I always lock it. Always. I stepped inside slowly. The lights were off. I reached for the switch. Nothing. The power was cut. My heart pounded. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight. As I walked into the living room, I froze. There, taped to my wall, was a photo. Another one. Me and Daniel. At the restaurant that night. Same clothes. Same table. On the back, written in red marker, "I see everything." I sank to the floor. I was being watched. Followed. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. The fear hit me all at once. My skin turned cold. I stood up slowly, scanning the room. Nothing was broken. Nothing stolen. Just the picture, proof that someone had been in my home, had been close enough to hear and see everything, maybe more than once. I called the police. I told them someone broke in. I left out the affair. I didn't want judgment or questions I couldn't answer. They came, looked around, filed a report, said it could be a prank. Maybe an ex. Maybe a stalker. They didn't take it seriously. They didn't see the message behind the photo. After they left, I couldn't sleep. I sat up all night with the lights on, phone in hand, waiting. Nothing happened. The next morning, I drove straight to Mark's office. I hadn't seen him since the park. I waited outside until he showed up. When he saw me, he stopped walking. "We need to talk," I said. "I have nothing to say," he replied. I showed him the photo. He stared at it. No reaction. "You should go to the police." I did. They didn't care. "I think this is you." He stepped back. "Why would I do that?" "You said this wasn't over. You've been talking to Daniel. You've been staying at Tara's. You're following me." He shook his head slowly. "You think I have time to play games? After what you did? That's not a no." He glared at me. "You really don't know, do you?" My heart dropped. "No what?" He didn't answer. He just walked away. I stood there stunned. What was he talking about? What was I missing? Later that day, I went back through every text, every photo, every email I'd received since the night everything fell apart. One message stood out. The first one. "You really think you were the only one lying?" I stared at it for hours. The next morning, I went to Tara's building again. Not to her door. To the leasing office. I told them I needed to see the visitor logs. Said I lost something and thought a friend might have turned it in. The girl at the desk was young. She didn't ask questions. She pulled up the records. Mark had been there more than a dozen times in the last month. But so had someone else. A name I hadn't seen in years, Rachel Scott. Rachel was Mark's ex-girlfriend. From way before me. I'd only met her once, in passing. She was cold, distant. I'd heard she left town years ago. Apparently, she came back. I asked the leasing office for video footage. The girl hesitated. Said she couldn't do that. I offered money. She gave me a USB. I went home and watched every clip. And there it was, clear as day. Rachel, walking into Tara's building. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with Mark. One video made me freeze. Rachel unlocking the door to Tara's apartment with a key. My stomach turned. I called Tara. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I got in my car and drove over. Her door was closed. I knocked. Silence. Then I saw it. Her welcome mat was gone. So were the plants she kept on the balcony. She'd moved out. No warning. No goodbye. The leasing office confirmed it. Tara had ended her lease 2 days earlier. Left no forwarding address. I went home and searched Rachel Scott on Facebook. Nothing. Then I searched her name and Chicago. A few news articles came up. One about her job. Another from years ago, about her and Mark. It was an engagement announcement from before we met. They were supposed to get married. He never told me that. I kept digging. I found her sister's page. I scrolled through photos until I saw something that made me freeze. A recent photo. Rachel, smiling, with a group of people. One of them was Daniel. I zoomed in. No doubt about it. Daniel. My affair partner. My mind couldn't make sense of it. Daniel and Rachel. Mark and Tara. All tied together. This wasn't random. This was revenge. Someone, or maybe all of them, had set me up. I sat at my kitchen table, the room dark except for the light of my laptop screen. I laughed bitterly. What is this? Some kind of game? No game. Just the truth. He sent me an address, an old studio loft in Pilsen, on the south side of Chicago. I didn't want to go. Every cell in my body screamed that this was a trap, but I had to know. The building was half empty, the kind of place artists rented cheap. I walked in and took the elevator up. My hands were sweating. My heart felt like it was punching my chest. The door was already open. Inside, there was a table in the middle of the room. Around it sat Daniel, Rachel, and Mark. Rachel looked bored. Mark looked angry. Daniel looked tired. I stepped in slowly. Where's Tara? Rachel gave a dry laugh. Gone. She didn't want to be part of this anymore. Part of what? I asked. Mark leaned forward. A little experiment. A lesson. I stared at him. What are you talking about? Rachel answered for him. We wanted to see how long it would take before you completely fell apart. My knees buckled slightly, but I stayed standing. Why? Why go through all this? Mark finally stood. You want the truth? Fine. You cheated. You lied to me. But it wasn't just about that. You were always somewhere else. You gave up on us long before Daniel came into the picture. I shook my head. So what? That gives you the right to play puppet master with my life. Rachel crossed her arms. Call it karma. Daniel looked at me, his face softer than the others. I didn't know at first. About Rachel. About Mark's plan. I got dragged in. But when I found out, I stayed. That's on me. I turned to Mark. You said you loved me. I did, he said. But you broke something. And I wanted you to feel what I felt. So I called Rachel. We started talking. Then Tara got involved. She hated how you treated her anyway. You used her. Just like you used me. My voice cracked. So this was never about healing. Or closure. Just punishment. No, Mark said. This was about control. Taking back what you took. The room went quiet. Just the hum of the city outside the windows. Then I exploded. You think you're heroes? You think you're teaching me some kind of lesson? You're just as broken as I am. Maybe worse. You lied. You stalked me. You let me go insane thinking someone was after me. You broke into my home. Rachel stepped forward. We never broke in. You left your window unlocked. You were careless. I stepped back, shaking. Get away from me. Daniel stood. Laura, I'm sorry. I should have stopped this when I found out. But I didn't. And now, it's all gone too far. I turned to leave, but Mark said something that made me freeze. I didn't want it to end like this. I looked over my shoulder. Then why do it? He just stared at me, jaw clenched. No answer. I left the loft without another word. My heart felt like it had been torn apart all over again. I walked down the empty street, the cold wind biting at my skin, but I barely felt it. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment and cried until my chest hurt. Over the next few weeks, things slowly unraveled. Tara's number was disconnected. Rachel vanished from social media. Mark signed the final divorce papers without another word. Daniel tried to call once, but I didn't answer. I blocked his number. I was alone. But for once, I didn't mind the silence. It was honest. My therapist said it was emotional warfare what they did. That it wasn't healthy or fair. I believed her. But I still couldn't say I didn't deserve some of it. What hurt the most wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I had become the kind of person who could drive people to do something like that. And worse, hadn't seen it coming. Months passed. I sold the apartment. Started fresh. Took a job at a small nonprofit helping women get back on their feet. I still went to therapy. I still had bad nights. But I was building something again. Something real. Sometimes I think about Mark. Sometimes I wonder if he ever looks back and regrets how far he went. But then I remember his eyes that day in the loft. No, he meant every second of it.